All right, we are back for another episode of AI Tool Report Live. Today we have Yoav, who is Guide's CEO and co-founder on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you, Liam. Great having here.
Yeah, I'm really excited with this one. We've obviously worked with Guide for a long time now, over a year on the newsletter front. So initially in contact with Moran, and then we've done some stuff with Dan, and now we've got you on the podcast as well. So we're slowly working our way into the Guide system as it stands.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think something that I really want to know about Guide and about yourself is kind of like how you even got to here in the first place. Like before Guide, what was the case? So I was wondering if you could maybe share a little bit about your professional background before Guide even existed.
for sure. So first of all, I started my career as an engineer, software engineer, and I led engineering teams focused primarily and not surprisingly on AI and video streaming, video encoding, natural language processing and understanding. So a lot of the stuff we're doing now, but with LLM and all the recent advancement, all the ecosystem kind of changed. But that's how I started, and that's also how I met Dan, my co-founder back in 2010, when he co-founded a different company called Quilt with a Q. Quilt is a video delivery network at the edge. Basically, it serves like all the online video in the US, in the EU, whether it's like Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, ESPN Live, HBO Go, across the Verizon network, the Comcast network, British Telecom network. And what we did back then is basically distribute the content based on the watching characteristics of each household. So if you're a Liverpool fan and I like Game of Thrones, based on that, we'll distribute the content to make sure you get the HD stream at home. And that's how we met. I joined Dan as one of their first employee. And then I worked there for like 7 years. Since Quilt, I was a VP product in different early stage startup where I would use a lot of Loom videos for pre-sale, post-sale, onboarding. So that was part of the, I would say, vision for Guide. And then when COVID started, Dan and I kind of reconnected. And when everyone were really stressed about the vaccine and the lockdown and everything around COVID, we saw a lot of opportunities in the market, how everything is shifted to kind of a remote first workplace, and how we want to reduce the Zoom session and make video creation more accessible to everyone in the workplace. So that's, I think, kind of was the trigger for what we're going to talk today.
At that point, so when you're meeting Dan, I can kind of see from your professional history that a lot of your experience is in product. So I'm kind of curious, what made you switch out of being on the kind of product marketing teams and delve into that entrepreneurial journey? Or has that always been something that you've been interested in as well?
So first of all, like I'm based in Israel. Israel is called the startup nation because that's what we build stuff. We like to build stuff. We have like a lot of ideas and we want to implement it. And my first startup was actually when in the summer of ninth grade. So I started like my journey in the startup ecosystem really early on. I just joined a startup. I was on the support side. Then they asked me to do some QA. Then I started to learn how to code and started writing part of the feature. So I kind of learned myself into the engineering space, and then I also went to the uni and did my computer science degree. So I think a lot of what I'm doing right now is like a combination of technology and customers, because when you join at an early stage startup, even if you're an engineer or QA or even if you're a sales rep, everyone are kind of like are covering all the aspects. You can't be like the second employee if you're not in touch with the customer. So I think like customer centric or customer first approach is something I'm used to for my engineering days and then my product days, and that's something that also in Guide it's part of kind of our slogan. Like we're always talking to our customers and listening for their needs, and based on that we're building the roadmap and what's coming in the next quarter. So I think that's like part of what made me shift to the product, and then later on to found the company that is all about communication and video and improving customer communication.
Yeah, if we're gonna, I'd love to delve into the product side. You said that you kind of have a lot of conversations with your customers to find out what they like, what they don't like, and so on. And I'm wondering, from the product side of things, like how important is quantitative versus qualitative information? So those interviews, how do they compare against like statistics that you're measuring as well? Like, what is the percentage split that you kind of take into account when you're shaping the product?
Cool. So I think in an early stage, like in-depth conversation has a lot of value. As you start growing and growing, the data, you have more data set, and then also the data has a lot of like insights. Well, I think the right approach is kind of a mix of both, because there's a lot of stuff you can see in the data, but not necessarily you can understand the reason for it. Like let's say you have churn, right? You can talk with customer. Maybe it's because of the pricing. Maybe they didn't get the product. Maybe they were looking for a feature that weren't like intuitive. So I think a lot of it is doing both. That's one thing. The second part is I think there's a lot of buzz around Gen AI in the last year, probably a bit more, and most of the cases people look at Gen AI as like a productivity tool. It saves time. From my guide perspective, what we're trying is to really quantify the ROI, the business KPIs that we're improving. And we'll probably talk about it later on. But if I'm a support rep, I don't create videos for the sake of creating videos, right? I have a load of support tickets which I need to address. And if I'm able to reduce 20% of it by having my end users watching the content, understanding how to solve the ticket, and then don't approach support at all, that's my angle. So I think it's always about how you use Gen AI to really meet a business agenda and not just save time, because save time is great, but it's not something people tend to pay for it, and it's not really sticky.
I think you have a really unique perspective because you've worked in AI and machine learning for a long time. And for most people in the AI space, they've only been even made aware of it since ChatGPT came to be a couple of years ago. So I was wondering if you could take me back to maybe the first time you heard about AI or the first time you were working with AI, and like what did it look like at that point? What was the kind of first applications that you were working with?
So I think if you look first of all at stuff we did like 5 years ago, not talking about like 10 years ago, like 5 years ago, even stuff like transcription of a Zoom session was like cutting edge technology. Nowadays it's commodity, right? I don't need to write a line of code to transcribe a Zoom call. Same goes, one of the project I did with one of the largest banks in the US was like automatic routing of the call center, and based on the question to route it to the agent that can help you. So back then it was like a 2 years project with 5 data scientists, and then you end up like addressing 5% of the use cases. Versus now with like one or two people, within 2 weeks you can, using like LLM, if you know the domain, you can really provide like an initial solution that will probably address 20-30% of the use case. So I think that the I would say the technology barrier is much lower, the time to value is much faster, and now it's mostly about the business use case, how you put it into action, how you use it, and how you create some kind of moat, so not everyone can just copy paste your solution in a second by just a nice prompt to an OpenAI API call.
And how long has Guide been around for exactly? Like how many years?
So we've launched the product officially in November 22. So basically, next month is 2 years old, the product. But I would say it took us about 6 months until we really figured out the product market fit, and then it started like exploding and growing exponentially. And part of it was like the AI features, which back then was a feature and now is like the product. So I think it's like the more we incorporated more and more AI functionality and reduce the time to create, the time you need to spend on editing videos, and really streamline the entire process, branding, music, motion, then suddenly the value was so big and we started seeing a increase of we jumped from 50x signups, from 50 signups a week to 1,000 signups a week, and started going like that in this trajectory months over months over months.
Got you. I was wondering if you take me back to that time you said that it's at the time it was a feature, not a product. So at the point when you and Dan are sitting there and you've got your whiteboards out and you're trying to decide what guide will be, like what was the genesis of the idea? What was the forefront of like what this product would do, what the service would do?
Cool. So I think first of all, it's kind of an evolution. Like where we started, it's not where we're now. In the early days, we thought about like kind of Uber for questions. You have a question, you click on a button, like you get a taxi. Someone that knows Excel jump on a call and gives you an answer. Then we said, okay, we started like talking to customers, and then we understood that a lot of the answers are really specific to your business organization. Like if I'm a sales rep in Checkpoint, if I have a question on Salesforce, I need someone in Checkpoint to address that question. I can't ask someone from Palo Alto Networks and so on. So, and then we said, okay, where can you find the answers to all those questions in all the Zoom and team recordings? So we started seeing if we can build an FAQ kind of library based on the extracting the information from those recordings. And then we ended up seeing that a lot of it is junk, like it's kind of a junk, like garbage in, garbage out. A lot of it is not up to date, and not necessarily the answer in the Zoom session is the right answer you want to pass along to the other team members. So the key understanding was that people want and need to create content, but creating content documentation processes is something that no one really likes doing unless your boss tells you to do it. So we wanted to really make the process as simple as possible and reduce all the friction from the manual edits, writing the script, making sure it's based on the company brand guidelines and the templates. So we kind of took all those like manual stuff that people were complaining on and just automate everything using AI. I think one of the common complaints we heard about screen capture tools like Loom or Snagit is I need to create a video. It takes me at least 5, 6 takes until I get it right. Because in one case the page didn't load, the other take I mumbled a bit. So like people were like for them like you were talking with people saying like they actually blocked 3 hours in their calendar to record a single video, and then 2, 3 weeks later the video is not up to date and they need to redo it. So we wanted to reduce that time and make updating content as easy as updating a PowerPoint, creating content as easy as taking a screenshot, and that was like our main goal.
With that, what customers do you see get the most value out of Guide? Because obviously you have some sort of balance between enterprise customers and then individual users. So are most people using it for internal team communication? What are some other kind of use cases that people get from Guide?
Cool. So we see. So first of all, we see it across different geos, different company sizes, different verticals. So it's really it addresses a lot of different challenges. But the common denominator, I would say, or the typical roles that we're seeing using Guide a lot is first of all customer support teams. Like with Guide, they're able to reduce 20-30% of their support tickets. And if you do reach out to support, usually they have like a 4 to 5 back and forth question versus when they send a video, you watch it, you understand it, and you close the ticket. So the time to resolve a ticket is much shorter. So like customer support on software applications is a very common use case. Second of all is like customer education or L&D teams for training purposes. Think about like DocuSign University or Checkpoint Academy. Those like teams, and also in large organization, you have like teams like learning and development teams that all they do is create content and help different departments with the onboarding, with training, with adoption of new processes. So that's very common. And the last one is probably product marketing, like new feature announcement, a lot of how to question like if it's a fintech software and they have like hundreds of different integration, like how do I integrate Stripe with Microsoft Defender? How do I integrate Stripe with NetSuite? So a lot of how to question, because even in many of the cases, even the actual agents don't necessarily know the answer. Like sometimes like they have thousands of integration. Most of the agents know 5 or 10 of those, and the rest is maybe you have one guy in the team that knows the answer, and if he leaves tomorrow, there's like zero knowledge. So I think capturing the tribal knowledge, how I call it, is critical, and being able to reduce I would say, the blockers and doing it is key here.
So it's about streamlining that knowledge creation and consumption process kind of internally within these teams. And
For
by
sure.
the sounds of it, like you are kind of more enterprise focused. You've got a lot of these kind of teams using it. And I think when people think about like this sort of software, like one of the ones that comes to mind is Loom, for example. A lot of like individual people use Loom. And I was wondering if you could maybe go over the differences between like kind of your product and Loom and kind of like where you excel. Because I realized that you'd written a blog recently about some of the kind of security issues and stuff that come with that and how Guide is very enterprise focused. I was wondering if you kind of just like cover that for me.
For sure. So first of all, I think Loom is probably one of the best products I ever used, and part of the vision for Guy was for me as a Loom user. I used to create a lot of videos in my VP product days on for the trial period, for onboarding purposes, for new features. And always was really challenging for the team to create the content. Sometimes the guy that created the video is not a native speaker, or maybe is based in Texas with the heavy Texan accent. So we needed like some guy in Israel or in Ukraine to create the content, someone else to do the narration. We need someone for marketing to improve the brand kit and the brand guidelines, like the fonts, the colors, the edits. Someone from the enablement team to write the script, and then to use some sort of a video editing tool, could be Camtasia or Video or other tools to kind of synchronize the visual with the audio stream, and then to upload it to Vimeo or Wistia or YouTube, where usually like only the marketing team had access. So it became really like tedious and lengthy, and we ended up like recording, like it took us like 3 months to have 4 or 5 videos ready for our customers, and then when you end up also after 6 months or a year using the same video, which are not up to date, because it's really hard to update the videos. So I think in essence, creating content or creating video, most people, it's not, they don't know, they don't to write the script, and they need help. They don't, not necessarily are the ones that are doing it. Then editing is another challenge by itself, because editing in Loom usually means just re-record the Loom from scratch, right? There's no really way to update part of the video. And then there's like on top of it stuff that customers were missing, like analytics. I want, if I have a campaign, I want to know exactly which type of customer or segment watch which part of the video, which videos based on which features, and I want to connect it to my marketing automation tools like HubSpot, sales automation tools like Outreach, my CRM. So I think like making the creation easy, making the editing easy, integrating it to all the workflows with the analytics, with the branding, like that, what made like a real change. And in our case, our focus is, it's not a generic video tool. It's for like how to software application, explain people how to do stuff in Excel, in Salesforce, in HR system, in CRMs, in ERPs. So that's why I think we're more laser focused on that versus like being like a generic video creation tool.
Got you. So it's a lot more integrated into kind of these different tools that
Yeah,
everyone's using anyways, such as your CRM.
exactly.
You'd also mentioned that quickly AI went from being a feature to the product itself. Could you delve into like what do you use proprietary AI? Are you calling from an API such as ChatGPT? What does the actual kind of underlying software look like that runs and powers Guide?
For sure. So I think first of all, the biggest question always is build or buy. Like everything you do with AI, does it make sense to build it, or is there an open source or off the shelf solution that can provide you? And that's the answer to it. It always depends on where you're like edge. If like for example like text to speech, there's plenty of solution in the market from Google and GCP to 11 Labs and others. So we picked a tool. Basically, we picked two of the best tools there are for text to speech, but we built our own algorithm which learns the customer dictionary and adjusts the text to speech, like terminology, like product names, feature name, customer names, based on your needs and based on your edit. So as you edit the video, we keep improving the pronunciation and the way we pronounce it in different languages and stuff. So this is a case where we just pick something out of the box and just improve that for our own use case. Now, same goes for writing the script. We have different models. We use under the hood both Claude and OpenAI and Llama for different purposes depending on the use case. For example, if you want to convert a PDF or a PowerPoint to a video, you need to have like visual understanding. So image to text model, LLM model is different than text to text, and so on. And then again, even if we take something like OpenAI, we do fine tuning, we enrich the context. For example, if you create a video on DocuSign, we'll enrich it with the DocuSign Help Center. So it's not just what the LLM was trained on, it's also have additional context. If you create it on Salesforce, we'll enrich it with your own internal content in your own knowledge base LMS. So it's like specific context to your own business. And we'll also provide examples in the to the LLM model. Like let's say you have 5 videos you created on top for stuff on Monday, and you edit, you invested time. Now we can tell the LLM those are the best example. When you create the script, do it based on those examples. So it helps it improve over time and tune it based on each individual account.
Got you. So it is very like individualized as well. Like you're going for that level of personalization and understanding to each individual team and organization as well, which someone with a Scottish accent would probably help massively because translating and communicating some of the words that I use is definitely a challenge at times, as people from who listen to the podcast know as well. Something I have noticed about Guide as a product is that your product team's obviously on top of things, and this is probably credit to you that you're always bringing out new features, new AI features, different translations, stuff like that. And I'm just wondering, with all these kind of different features that you're bringing out, do you ever find it hard to translate all the value that Guide offers? So when you're talking to an enterprise client and you're going through all these different things, like what are the main things that you maybe speak to them about and kind of highlight as the best part, the biggest needle movers for their internal organization?
So I would split the answer to two, because one, I think like it's really hard to convey all the value in the first 2 days. So it's always about like it's a journey, like a marketing nurture campaign, that you need to have the user like bits and bytes of additional value. Like after in the first day, you just want the user to create content. The second day, you want him to invest a bit in the branding because it will make his life, like he'll probably share it with the team. Then you want him to see all the editing capabilities like blurring private information, or adding like additional sources like PowerPoints and PDF. And then you want him to see the analytics. So it's like you build those journeys based on your goals. What is your goal is for the user to pay, to create as much as video as you want, to share it with as many people as you want. So based on the goals, you need to walk them through a journey. And we usually, based on your first 48 hours, we kind of segment you based on what type of persona you are. Are you a more a viewer, a creator? Are you a manager or not? And based on that, we'll define the journey that you is best fit for you. And over time, it may change based on your activity. So I think it's something that you learn on the go. On the other aspect is, I think the reason why we created Guide is because the best way to transfer knowledge is using a chat, right? If I could talk with every user, I would jump on a Zoom call with everyone. They ask me question, I'll reply specifically to their question. So I think a video in that sense is the closest thing to a human interaction like we do now with someone explaining, showing, which is much more effective than like written documentation, like sending someone an article or a PDF or a PowerPoint. So we're trying to use Guide for our feature announcement in our support chatbot, for the onboarding process. So everything we do, basically we test it on ourselves, and then you also get a sense of what works and what doesn't, and you can feed it back to the product team on our side.
I mean, with that, you're kind of again saying that the North Star that you're looking at is streamlining communication. So my brain naturally leads me to the question of like, where does the future of Guideline in the next 3 to 5 years? Is that incumbent or dependent on how AI advances? Do you have like a kind of vision of where this will be in 5 years? Can we get any better than what we've currently got?
So we can. I can tell you there's a few big announcements coming in end of November in Microsoft Ignite that will be part of that. It will blow your mind in what stuff like really like it's what we can do, and I think there's still a long way to go. If you ask me like 3 to 5 years to the future, probably like two main trends that I can see is first of all personalization. You can already see the partnership between OpenAI and Apple starting to work on that. So you have a Liam LLM model and you have a Yoav LLM model. It's a different for the same question. You get a different response based on your characteristics, your past questions, and who you are and what you've been doing and so on. So I think the more we advance, the more personalized it is. And in Guide case, we could create the same video in different variation based on who you send it to. For example, we can change the voice, we can change the tone of voice, we can change the logo, and we can change like the level of depth in the video. So personalizing based on the creator, but also based on the sender. That's one thing. The second one is like like you see it a lot in the R&D and engineering teams, like all the Copilot and GitHub that helps you create like the code. In our case, I think Copilot to update the content, like automatically detect changes and update the video for you. And again, it's a question is if it will be fully automated or I assume it will take time until we get it's like a self-driving car, right? You'll have semi-auto driving car, so it will update the content that ask you for review, and then the end goal will probably be like fully automated.
So with these new announcements are coming out, when exactly are they coming out?
It's part of Microsoft Ignite, end of November.
End of November. All right, we'll have to release this podcast exactly at the end of November in that case. With that, I want to take things kind of outside of Guide, the product, for a second and talk about like Guide the journey. A question I always kind of love to ask, because it's obviously at the forefront, I can see it right now, is why the color red and why the name Guide? Why was that what you went for?
Cool. So that's a great question. I get it a lot. I think first of all, when Dan and I started, we did like a before ChatGPT, so we had to do it ourselves. We did a huge research about what type of names people actually remember, and then we saw that people first of all names with a typo, and names with a double letter, like Zoom has a double O, or Fiverr has a double R. So we picked a name that is in our own domain with a typo and a double D. And Reddit's just because it stands out. If you go to an event or go to your LinkedIn like feed and see like 20 logos, the red one and sometimes the purple one will stand out in the crowd, and that's something that it has more sense, more uh, you can't miss it when you see like 20 different logos. So that was like the main reasoning for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, now that you say it, I think about a lot of AI companies and their logos and colors, and there's a lot of green and blue there. Seems to be synonymous with the AI space in general. That's the
Correct.
colors that people will opt for.
Yeah, for sure.
With those early stages of founding Guide, so obviously you'd worked in product teams, you've been part of kind of entrepreneurial startups from like a young age. What was the process like of co-founding a company and being able to decide your kind of different areas of expertise and how you kind of manage that relationship of actually just co-founding a company in general?
So First of all, I think the key in funding a company is first of all finding the right partner. That's like before even you have the idea itself. So I think Dan and I are going way back since 2010. We work together, we know each other, and in many cases we talk to one another more than we talk to our wife. So I think part of like the relationship of the two founders is always critical. Second of all, is always there's a question of the founders market fit, not the product market fit, but the founders market fit. Like if you take uh, companies like where DevOps software, probably one of the founder was a DevOps engineer, right? So in this case, like we picked a problem to solve that we had it firsthand. In my entire career, I used product tours and pop-ups and different like checklists and different ways to improve the engagement of the users. And the only thing that really worked was videos with Loom, but creating the Looms and making sure they're up to date was really challenging. So we picked something that we felt firsthand. And then I think it's always about like the next step is always finding the right team and the continuous search for a product market fit until you find it, which is sometimes a bit misleading because it's kind of a moving target. It's not like a one and a zero you found it and then you zoom in. It's like something that keeps changing and you need to adjust based on the market dynamics, based on the competition, based on the user feedback. So it's an ongoing kind of task.
Mm. With that, it sounds as if there's a lot of things changing. You're trying to find that product market fit. You've obviously got these two co-founders that know each other very well. You have this idea in your mind of what you want the company to be, what you want the internal team culture to be like. How do you maintain that kind of spirit of entrepreneurship and development as you start to build? And as a part of that question, like how big is the team now?
So the team is kind of spread around across. We have a team in San Francisco, New York, Kiev, Warsaw, and Tel Aviv in Israel. So it's kind of we're spread around, and I think thanks to the fact we started in COVID and we were like remote first in the early days, everything about the culture and communication, we're using video and Slack on a daily basis. So that's something that works pretty well. I think part of maintaining the flair is first of all having really customer centric or customer experience kind of state of mind. Today, everyone in Guide, from a junior QA to the VP sales, are, have their customers like use case and needs first and foremost. And we're trying to have for any new employee to join customer calls to get their feedback, to have the engineers talking to customers and getting feedback. So the more customer centric you are, the more probably the better fit you'll have. That's on one hand. The second part is Dan and I always have like the north compass of where we want to go, and we always make sure that we have at least 20% of our engineering efforts focused on the strategic direction that we think will bring the company and to where we want it, even if it's not necessarily feedback you get from users. Users sometimes can talk about their problems. They're not necessarily can like explain or how to solve it. So I think it's mostly like you know where you want to go. You have the goals in mind, and you have the right team in place to make sure they both execute, but they have the bigger picture in front of them.
Mm. And it's difficult to stay on task when there is so many opportunities, especially in this AI machine learning kind of software development space. We've realized that as well. We've launched a million different features. Some things don't perform as well as others. Some projects will lay in that wastebasket that you'll never see again. What are maybe like some lessons you learned, early challenges? Is there anything that comes to mind as like you really learned as a lesson? Never do this again, never do that again.
Yeah, I think part of like the decision making process is also saying what you don't want to do or what you're not. Like for example, sometimes customers trying to push us to be more an LMS kind of. We need quizzes or we need like courses, and we're saying there's like plenty of LMS solution in the market. That's not us. We don't have any advantage. You can use Guide, embed it in any LMS you have today. We can recommend you based on our cost, but or for example, there was a customer that want us to support mobile. Now, mobile is there might be a market, but most of our customer base wanted us to support desktop, which they have Excel and SAP application and Tableau desktop and others. So we focus our agenda on doing desktop, and we just launched it last week. So I think it's a big one for our customers. So it's really not just trying to make sure, like our goal is not to make all the customers happy, but to make sure the majority of our focuses on the right user that really use the product on a daily basis. So I think it's always like the data, the feedback, and the goal that you want to achieve, and that's always makes the decision process more clear. And maybe another aspect is sometimes founders, especially they're like are in love in their own concept that they're not listening to feedback. I think that's something that Dan and I are really part of our DNA is we don't have all the answers, and we like sometimes the best feature could come from a feedback from our QA team or someone in support, not necessarily from us. Sometimes it could be a user that write us feedback on a G2 review. So I think like being open to feedback and criticism is really a key part to growing the product to where you want to be.
Absolutely, it's instrumental, and we found that as well from our readers. AI tool reports helped shape how we deliver that product, that newsletter on a daily. It's been absolutely paramount. I'm really curious about how your role has changed over time at the company. I can see, at least initially, you were very, very involved in product. I think at one point your title was CPO.
Yeah.
I can see that recently you're doing a lot of kind of public appearances. You done a live event with St. Can last week and last month, and it seems like you're doing kind of more public interviews and stuff. So I was wondering if you could walk me through the transition of like your role in the company.
Cool. So I think as a founder and as a CEO, I usually do what brings the most value to the company. Uh, in the early days, I was kind of an all-around player. I was a QA. I did support shift. I managed the R&D team, and then as we started growing, I moved to the product team, and when we started growing, we brought someone to manage the product team, and then we focused on sales and marketing, and now on customer success and expansion. So I think at every given point in time, it's based on the maturity of the company and where my focus is mostly critical. Nowadays, I'm still involved in the product, but I would say 80% of my attention goes to sales, marketing, customers, and people. Like how to scale the company, how to build the people, how to make sure the company structure can support the growth we are at, especially with the geo spread. Different time zone, different culture, different languages. So you need to have the right people, the experienced people with the right like DNA that I think are the right fit for us. I think probably like those are where my today I'm mostly focused on.
For anyone listening, I assume they'll get the same sense that I am, that you're deeply, deeply involved in the company. You kind of live and breathe it. You're wearing the t-shirt right now for anyone that's listening to this audio only. How do you manage that sense of a work-life balance as a co-founder and a CEO? Does that exist? I was
Yeah,
like, how do you do that?
yeah. So if you ask most of the employees, they'll tell you I'm available 24/7. Actually, I have three kids at home and my wife, so I'm trying to balance it as much as I can. Usually, I block my Mondays afternoon to make sure I have time with the kids at least once a week and over weekends. But again, it's a challenge for sure. Like I think one like when I bought my Apple Watch, the first thing I did is remove Slack and emails and WhatsApp from the watch because I said that will kill my balance for sure. So like I think it's a continuous struggle, but I think it's good problems to have. Like I enjoy what I do at work. I enjoy the company. I love my kids, and like balancing like Guide is like my fourth kid. So it's like I have four kids, three kids, and a startup that I started 2 years ago. So that's kind of how I look at it.
I mean, I feel as if you've already answered this and what you've just said there, but is that what keeps you going through all of this? Like building a startup isn't easy, it's hard, there's loads of challenges, and there has to be a motivation behind why you continue to do what you do. Is that very much being family oriented, or is there other factors in there that kind of keep you on that line, keep moving?
So I think, as I started in the beginning of the session, first of all, I'm working in startups since I was really young. If I work in a company like a big one like Google, Facebook, Cisco, whatever you name it, I won't enjoy my time. I probably work half as much, if not less. Will probably earn 4x more, but I won't enjoy the day to day. So I always say also to our employees, like my goal is to have everyone in the company come to work with a smile, enjoy what it does. It doesn't necessarily mean that every day is a great day. You have like it's a roller coaster. There are good days, bad days, but as long as you believe in like the end goal and you believe in the people around you and the team, I think that's what makes me wake up in the morning and do what I do. And for Dan and I, our goal is we're building something big. It takes time. The best companies, there's no like overnight success. The best one, it takes them 8, 10 years. That's like on average. So it's a marathon, and you need to have like the time and the patience to do it right. And again, that's kind of a process that you go with the company.
Mm. You've obviously got an innate trust in that process and you have a grander vision. You talked about the concept of this being a marathon. What does the finish line of that marathon look like for you? Like, where do you imagine Guide being positioned in the global SaaS AI space in the next 5, 10 years? What's the North Star?
Cool. So for us, I would say the North Star is to have Guide as like a everyday tool that every employee use in between PowerPoint and Zoom. So like you have PowerPoint and Zoom that or Teams doesn't really matter. So with the Guide as like the tool to create content in the business workplace, that's our goal. Like and
Got you.
today we're in early stage, early adopters. We're growing fast. The day that my mother and my kids will use Guide, that would probably be the day that it's like ChatGPT, right? A year ago, only like few people used it, and once our parents and kids will use ChatGPT, then it's kind of fully adopted. So that's our end goal with Guide.
Got you. Being an absolute household name
Yeah.
baseline. Got you. With that, I want to take things macro and take a macro focus just to kind of finish off. And I'm wondering, you'd kind of spoke at one point during the podcast talking about like a level of personalization, these fine-tuned models. Liam's model might be different from Yoav's model. Do you have any predictions for the AI or machine learning space in general in the next 5, 10 years of where you think this space is moving into and what's going to succeed in the future?
Yeah, so I think like if you saw you have all the like new plugins and applications, I think now we're starting to see a trend like you have the app stores, so you have like a marketplace for application on top of ChatGPT, and then that will become the new norm. That's something that it basically there's a new ecosystem that is becoming huge every day, and the personalization aspect is key for it, like because if I live in Israel and Dan lives in the US and I'm 40 years old and he's 50 years old, if I have two kids and he has two dogs, so based on who you are, really the LLM model should adjust. And it's really different than if you go today to Google and you search something about security. If you're an engineer or a sales rep, you'll get the same answer. I think I'm not even talking about like hyper personalization. Today, like the same search term will get the same response mostly, besides, some characteristic like your geolocation, your device ID, and stuff like that. So I think
Mm,
the concept is the context itself, how much information he has on the person that asked the question will be key. And with that, we also see the advancement in voice cloning and in general text to voice models. Today, there's in the new models you can actually show emotions. You can laugh, you can be angry, you can be sad. So a combination of voice cloning when I can clone your voice with a text-to-speech model and use emotion, and now bundle it with translation. Now you really can remove all the cultural, time zone, language barriers you have today when you need to talk with someone in Asia or someone in France or someone in Germany. So I think like it's a all like it will open up a whole new kind of communication that we were blocked till now, but it also has as part of it a lot of compliance and legal issues. Like if I created videos with Liam voice cloning model and Liam left the company, can I still use it, or do I need who owns your voice, you or I?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of like compliance and legal questions. Same goes for who owns the IP. Right? I created content. Some of them I enriched the LLM model with content from YouTube and content from Help Center of Intercom. So who owns it? Intercom, Google, YouTube, or I? So I think there's a lot of issues about copyrights, ownership, who owns the IP and stuff like that. That it's still not really resolved.
Do you foresee any solutions to these problems? Like aside from the kind of those ethical considerations, we're also seeing like an influx of deep fakes, for example. Like at Joe Rogan somehow promoting random supplements that don't exist, or someone started a Shopify store. Like, is there anything you see on that side of things that we can solve, or is that just something that's yet to come?
So there are some tactical solutions, for example, for images. Like there are like solutions that make sure that the LLM is only trained on images with copyright, and if you do use it, you pay them the fees. But for stuff like I would say voice cloning and stuff like that, I think it's mostly about regulations. Like the US, the EU, they need to have some sort of regulations around it. Otherwise, people can use it for for the wrong reasons of for not for the good of it. So I think it's something that it's really a challenge because you want to make sure people has access to the technology on one hand, but you want to make sure they don't use it for the wrong purposes.
There's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of opportunities, and it kind of leads me to my final question, which is if you were maybe going to give someone advice, a young person today that wanted to start their own AI company, their own SaaS company, what would you say? Would you tell them to start it, not start it? And if they were going to start it, what advice would you give them?
So the answer on my case, the answer is easy. As always, if you have a dream, go for it. That's a no-brainer. Really depends on what you want to do. I think that the common question I usually get asked a lot is, "Will AI replace humans?" And I think that's something that I keep telling people that AI will make your time more efficient, will help you to reduce repetitive tasks like creating highlights from this webinar or taking the transcript of this session and create it like a series of posts for LinkedIn. So it will make your life more efficient. It won't replace humans because it will just make you focus on your added value and not on stuff that anyone can do, like designing a logo, building a website. Like you can focus on the actual content, messaging, and where you bring the added value. So I think that's where I see the AI going forward.
I'm glad. It's a very optimistic message, and it's similar to what I tell people as well. I think it's never been easier to start a company, so just start anything. Doesn't matter what it is. If you're writing, building a company, posting YouTube videos, I think the entrepreneurial journey is very rewarding, fulfilling, and that creation of value is something to aspire for. So I want to firstly thank you for your time. I know that you're obviously a very busy person. So first of all, thank you. And second of all, if someone wants to maybe get in contact with yourself, speak to you, get in contact with people on your team, how would they do that?
Cool. So first of all, I'm available in LinkedIn. Whoever wants to connect and reach out on LinkedIn, I'm happy to. And second of all, I always tell people they can use the product and give it a try. We have a freemium version with the first 25 videos free of charge. You can try out the paid version for 2 weeks free of charge. So go to our website www.guide.com, sign up, try the product, and we'd love to get your feedback.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much.